Hey, everybody. I hope you guys are having an amazing Tuesday. It's me, Carolyn Denise. I'm back to do another reading. The reason why I am covering this topic is because we had a death within our family, with my husband's family, and this person was very near and dear to my heart as well as my husband's heart. And I'm reading this because I've read so many different texts around the world, the Sumerian, text from Lao Tzu, from Christ, from Buddha. And immediately when a death occurs, my mind goes to the Egyptian book of the coming and the going, as well as the Tibetan living and the dying. And I want to read to you chapter 19, and it's called Helping After Death. Okay. And this is just useful information. Everyone has a different belief. I hate to use the word belief because it's a lack of knowledge and knowing, but everybody has different values and different ethics and cultures from around the world based on your upbringing, your conditioning, your programming, your indoctrination. I'm just going to put it that way. And so it always is very, very interesting to me to compare what different cultures say about living and dying. So this is why I'm reading this. Okay. So where's my readers? Let me put these on. Let's just jump into it. All right. Helping after death. So often in the modern world, when someone dies, one of the deepest sources of anguish for those left behind to mourn is their conviction that there is nothing they can do now to help their loved one who is gone. A conviction that only aggravates and darkens the loneliness of their grief. Okay. But this is not true. There are many, many, many ways we can help the dead. And so help ourselves to survive their absence. Okay. One of the unique features of Buddhism, and one of the ways in which the omniscient skill and compassion of the Buddha is most profoundly demonstrated, is the many special practices available to help a dead person, and so also comfort the bereaved family members or friends. The Tibetan Buddhist vision of life and death is an all-encompassing one, and it shows us clearly that there are ways of helping people in every conceivable situation, since there are no barriers whatever between what we call life and what we call death. The radiant power and warmth of the compassionate of our heart, right? Heart chakra, can reach out to help in all states and all realms. See? So we're taught very much to be compartmentalized. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. Depending on what part of the world you are, this is what you're absorbed, and this is what you're focused on, and this is your conditioning, this is what your programming is. Until you break free and peel off those layers of programming, you won't ever, I truly, truly know, you won't ascend. You won't. You got to let go of this world. So it says, when we can help. The Bardo of Becoming, as it has already been described, okay, based on the video that I uploaded yesterday, last night, it says, may seem a very disturbed and disturbing time, yet there is great hope in it. The qualities of the mental body during the Bardo of Becoming that make it so vulnerable is clarity, mobility, sensitivity, and clairvoyance. Also make it particularly receptive to helping from the living. All right. The fact that it has no physical form or basis makes it very easy to guide. The Tibetan Book of the Dead compares the mental body to a horse, which can be readily controlled by a bridle, okay, or a huge tree trunk, which may be almost immovable on land, yet once floated in water, can be effortlessly directed wherever you wish, okay? Just like those big stones that we see all around the world that were built from our ancient ancestors, how they levitated the stones with sounds, all right? Just like the Coral Castle in Florida. This gentleman cracked the code. He realized a certain frequency will help vibrate and raise the resonance of stone. But we don't use the architecture to this day because most people find that it's not true and it's woo-woo when it's really the truth, okay? We're just not taught certain things or certain aspects. This is why you got to dig deep and you have to have a curious mind. And you have to be a critical thinker. All right, it says the most powerful time to do spiritual practice for someone who has died is during the 49 days of the bardo of becoming, placing special emphasis on the first 21 days, okay? It is during these first 3 weeks that the dead have a stronger link with this life, which makes them more accessible to our help, all right? So it is then that the spiritual practice has a far greater possibility of influencing their future and of affecting their chances of liberation, or at least a better rebirth, okay? We should employ every means possible to help them then, as after the physical form of their next existence begins gradually to be determined. And this is said to happen between the 21st and the 49th day after death. The chance of real change is very much more limited, all right? Help for the dead, however, is not confined to the 49 days after death. It is never too late to help someone who has died, no matter how long ago it was. The person you want to help may have been dead 100 years, okay? But it will still be benefit to practice for them. The Dujon Rinpoche used to say that even if someone has gained enlightenment and become a Buddha or Christ consciousness, or to put on Christ, which is a title, all right? All right, because you have to raise your understanding and your vibration and be reconnected to the All-Father. Once you get to that point, all right, he says, they will still need all the assistance they can possibly get in their work of helping others, okay? All right? How we can help. The best and easiest way to help a dead person is to do the essential practice of the Pwa I have taught in chapter 13, spiritual help for the dying. As soon as we hear that someone has died, which I will read chapter 13 in another video. I'm going backwards. Okay. All right. It says in Tibet, we say that just as it is the nature of fire to burn and of water to quench thirst, the nature of the Buddha is to present as soon as anyone invokes them. So infinite is their compassion, desire to help all sentient beings. Don't for one moment imagine that it would be less effective for you to invoke the truth to help your dead loved one or friend, okay, than if a holy man prays for them, all right? Because you are close to that person who has died, all right, who has transcended, left the body, okay? The intensity of your love and the depth of your connection will give you invocation and an added power. The masters have assured us, call out to them and the Buddhas will answer you. Kendro Tasing Chandran, I hope I said that right, the spiritual wife of Jamyang Yangshi, often used to say that if you really have a good heart, all right, and really mean well, then pray for someone. That prayer will be effective. So be confident, okay, that if someone you love very much so has died and you pray for them with true love and sincerity, your prayer will be exceptionally powerful. All right. The best and most effective time to do the patwa is before the body is touched or moved in any way. If this is not possible, then try to do the patwa in the place where the person had passed, or at least picture that place very strongly in your mind. There is a powerful connection between the dead person, the place of death, and also the time of death, especially in the case of a person who died in a traumatic way. Okay? In the bardo of becoming, as I have said, this dead person's consciousness goes through an experience of death every week on exactly the same day. So you should perform the patwa or whatever other spiritual practice you have chosen to do on any day of the 49th day period, but especially on the same day of the week that person transitioned or died. Okay? Whenever your deceased relative or friend comes into your mind whenever you hear or his or her name being mentioned, send that person your love. Then focus on doing the pathwa, the fawa, and do it for as long and as often as you wish. Another thing you can do whenever you think of someone who has died is to say immediately a mantra such as Om Mani Padma Hum, pronounced by Tibetans Om Man Padma Hum. The mantra of Buddha of compassion, which purifies each of these negative emotions that are cause of rebirth. Okay. The Om Ami Dadwa Hara, the mantra of Buddha, Amahata, and Buddha of limitless light. You can then follow that again with the practice of Fowa, sorry. But whether you do it in any of these practices or not to help your loved one who has died, don't forget that the consciousness in the bardo is acutely clairvoyant. Simply directing good thoughts towards them will be most beneficial. All right. And you're not taught this in the Western culture and followers of Christ. If you're a Buddhist, then you have a more in-depth understanding of what happens during the transition, as well as the Sumerians with the Egyptian Book of the Dead. There's practices there that they did. This whole preparation, all right, celebration of life. And actually, we do have it backwards. We are supposed to rejoice when they transition and cry when they're born. But yet so many of us do the complete opposite. I'm telling you, this world is upside down, inverted, backwards, and reversed. Like Chief says, I mean, I see it just by me reading and understanding and having the critical thinking mind to understand that, yeah, this world is upside down. It's by a set group of people, set group of beings. And some would say this is a great experiment, whatever you call it. I'm just telling you, something is troublingly wrong right now. And this is why we all have to focus on ascension. Like it says in the book, if you die before you die, you will never die. We are infinite beings, okay? We are infinite beings. We are immortals. And we really are, these bodies are batteries, salt and water is what we're comprised of with minerals. These are bodies that are batteries. And the battery will discharge or the battery will go out one day, right? But your essence, your pure essence, your soul, your energy will live on, right? Okay. So, but whether you do any of these practices or not to help your loved one who has died, don't forget that the consciousness in the bardo is acutely clairvoyant. Simply directing good thoughts towards them will be most beneficial. When you pray for someone who was close to you, you can, if you wish, extend the embrace of your compassion to include other deceased people in your prayers, the victims of atrocities, wars, disasters, and famines, or those who died and are dying in concentration camps such as those in China and Tibet. You can even pray for people who have died years ago, like your grandparents, long dead members of your family, or victims of wars, such as those in the world wars. Imagine your prayers going especially to those who lost their lives in extreme anguish, passion, and anger. Those who have suffered violent or sudden deaths have particularly urgent need for help. Okay. Victims of murder, suicide, accident, or war can easily be trapped by their suffering, their anguish and fear, or may be imprisoned in actual experience of death and so be unable to move on through the process of rebirth and becoming another being. Well, to become another person, as we see, in a different body. Same being, same energy, but just in a different life, different body, different family, different ever. Because until you reach the point of enlightenment or ascension, you're going to continue to come back. And that's around the world. I mean, if you compare the ancient cultures and the religions, then you'll see it. And I can hear some of my Christian brothers and sisters going, oh, that's hogwash, that's poppycock. When you die, you go to heaven. Okay. And if that's what I call your belief or your lack of knowledge and knowing. I'm going to tell you, I died and I came back. All right. I got the life review and I was in a tunnel and I heard the voice. Do you want to stay or do you want to go? And I simply said, I want to go back. I miss my mommy. I miss my auntie queen. I miss my mommy. And they sent me back. And the next thing I know, I'm back in my body. And I just thing over my face and I'm trying to pull the tube out of my mouth, the breathing tube. I was like pulling and they had to strap my arms down and they're like, oh, she's awake. So I'm just telling you, I'm using my real world experience of what has transpired with me and shedding light on this. Okay. I can't talk about something that I really don't have any experience on, which I do have experience in this part. Right. And I'm just giving comfort for whoever needs it. I'm just making this a point to share this information because I'm telling you, in the Western cultures, we don't discuss this stuff. We don't talk about this. Okay. So it says, so those who have suffered violent or sudden deaths have particular urgent need for help. Victims of murder, suicide, accident, or war can easily be trapped by their suffering, anguish, and fear, and may be imprisoned in the actual experience of death, and so be unable to move on through the process of the rebirth. All right. When you practice the fatwa for them, do it more strongly and with more fervor than you have ever done it before. Imagine tremendous rays of light emanating from the Buddhas or divine beings pouring down all their compassion and blessings. Imagine this light streaming down into your deceased loved ones or deceased person, totally purifying and freeing them from the confusion of pain of their death, granting them profound, lasting peace. Imagine then, with all your heart and mind, that the dead person dissolves into light and his or her consciousness is healed now and free from all suffering, soars up to merge indesirably and forever with the wisdom mind of the Buddhas and therefore the creator of all. All right, that energy goes up. All right. Some Western people who recently visited Tibet told me about following the incident they had witnessed. One day, a Tibetan walking by the side of the road was knocked over and killed instantly by a Chinese truck. A monk who happened to be passing quickly went over and sat next to the dead man lying on the ground. They saw the monk lean over him and recite some practice or other close to his ear. Suddenly, to the astonishment, the dead man revived. The monk then performed a practice they recognized as the transference of consciousness and guided him back calmly into death. What had happened? Clearly, the monk had recognized that the violent shock of the man's death had left him terribly disturbed, and so the monk had acted swiftly, first to free the dead man's mind from its distress, and then by means of the fatwa to transfer it to the Buddha realm or toward a good rebirth. All right. To the Westerners who are watching, this monk seemed to be just an ordinary person, but with this remarkable story shows that he was in fact a practitioner of a considerable power. And we all have that power. Yet we are not told that we have this power. All right. Meditation practices and prayers are not the only kind of help we can give to the dead. All right. We can offer charity in their name to help the sick and the needy. We can give possessions to the poor. Okay. We can give their possessions to the poor. We can contribute on their behalf to humanitarian or spiritual ventures such as hospitals, projects, hospices, and monasteries. We could also sponsor retreats by good spiritual practitioners or prayer meetings led by great masters in sacred places like the Bodhgwa. We could offer lights for the dead person or sponsor works of art related to spiritual practice. Another method of helping the dead, especially favored in Tibet and in the Himalayas, is to save the lives of animals due to slaughter and release them again into freedom. It is important to dedicate all the merit and well-being that spring from any such acts of kindness and generosity to that deceased person, and in fact to all those who have died, so that everyone who has died may obtain a better rebirth and favorable circumstances in the next life. We're not taught this. Now, this may sound foreign to some of you people who practice Christianity, and you're like, oh, well, that's not what the Bible says. Again, everybody has their own belief, and a belief is a lack of knowledge and knowing. I'm simply telling you that there is a life here that we are living now, and there is a life in the afterlife. And many of our ancestors and our ancient relatives knew this information, okay? And it's very important for you to study and research this for yourself, all right? I'm just telling you what transpired with me in this body that I'm in, okay? Clairvoyance of the deceased person. Remember, the clairvoyant consciousness of the person in the bardo of becoming is 7 times clearer than in life. All right. So if you think on that person, they will be able to know that you're thinking of them, and then they will come to you. All right. I know how that sounds. Just hear me out. This can bring them either great suffering or great benefit. So it is essential that after someone you love has died, you are aware as possible in all your behavior, so that as not to disturb or hurt them. All right. You know how someone passes and first thing someone says something evil about them or something that would not be considered likable. All right. And it says when the person passes, they see them in the room. They're in the room with you and they can see. They're with you for a certain period of time. So they follow you. They shout at you. I know how that sounds, but I'm telling you, it is true. It's true. My children at a young age saw my great aunt, my grandmother's sister, the woman who raised myself and my mother and some of her other sisters' children. My children saw her standing over my son's crib, my youngest son, Devin. Devin was only a baby, few days old. And Alex and Jordan saw her as clear as day. And they were in the room. They stood up and they looked. They walked into the doorway and she was standing over the crib and she looked at them and she smiled and she just dissolved into the air. Now, you would say, okay, that's a child. The child made that up. It's not true. It's not real. I'm him simply telling you that the children are more closer to that awareness and consciousness than we are as adults, because we've been put on filters and we're blinded and we're shielded and we've completely shut that side of our brain off. I'm just telling you. So you can believe what you want to believe. Like I said, belief is a lack of knowledge and knowing. It's about you knowing these things and you knowing that it is real. Okay. So it is essential that after someone you love has died, you are aware as possible in all your behavior so as not to disturb or hurt them. For when the dead person returns to those left behind or those invited to practice on their behalf, they are able, in their new state of being, not only to see what is going on, but to read minds directly. For this video, I loved my auntie. I respected her 110%, and I wanted to be like her. Because of her characteristics, she was very wise, very easy speaking, very approachable, a loving person, a direct person, didn't put up with no shit now. But I loved her. She had beautiful hair, beautiful skin, just a beautiful person. And I'm so thankful that I was able to be in her life and know her for the short period of time. And I wish I would have spent more time with her and went by. The only thing is that she smoked cigarettes and I have asthma. And so it would always trigger me. I would always sneeze and cough and it would be in my hair and my clothes when I would go visit her. And I would always have to take allergy medicine, either when I pulled up at her house or after I got in the car and left. But I didn't want to tell her that. But I think she knew that I had asthma and the smoke would trigger it. So that's the reason why I didn't spend as much time. But I loved her. And I have tears of joy in my eyes because I am so thankful that I had the chance to meet another human spirit, another sentient being like her. I have high regard for her. And that's why I'm making this video, because most people won't even take the time to even go look this stuff up. I'm the person that looks at stuff that people would say, oh, that's weird. That's strange. But that's just me. I've always been that way. Enough of me chit-chatting. Let me finish reading because now I'm crying. If relatives are only scheming and quarreling. Okay, let me go back one. For when the dead person returns to those who've left behind or those invited to practice on their behalf, they are able in their new state of being not only to see what is going on, but to meet minds directly. Oh, that's scary. That's real scary. If relatives are only scheming and quarreling about how to divide up their possessions, only talking and thinking of attachment and aversions with no real love for the dead person, this can cause them intense anger and hurt or disillusion, and they will then be drawn by their turbulent emotions into an unfortunate rebirth. So you don't want to think of them negatively or put negative things out there in the ether, because it's pure energy and you're sending that energy directly to them. In my ignorance, I have done that with deceased people, and because I didn't know what I know now, right? It's just, it's a lot, y'all. It's just, I get goosebumps when I think about it. So it says, for example, imagine if a deceased person saw spiritual practitioners supposedly practicing for him, but with no sincere thought in their minds for his benefit, and with their minds preoccupied with trivial distractions, the dead person could lose any faith, and he might ever have had. He might lose the faith he ever had. Imagine, too, if a dead person had to watch her loved ones distraught and helpless with grief. It could plunge her into a deep grief also. So just as you're grieving on this side, they're grieving over there, okay? Yeah, they get the life review, okay? But they actually get to be with you through this process, and you got to know this stuff. It's not about a belief. It's like when you breathe. You don't think about breathing, but you breathe. You know it, right? This is the same thing I'm telling you, all right? You got to put this in your mind. All right. You got to send that energy out because, like I said, we are batteries. Our bodies are salt, water, and minerals. All right. There's energy flowing through us. That's why when you stop breathing, what do? Check your pulse, open your mouth, clear your airway, and start compressions on your chest. And in order for them to do a good compression, they have to break a rib. All right. I'm just telling you, you get several ribs when they do the restarting of the heart. All right. Massage the heart and then shock you. They're bringing the energy back into the body, into the heart, because your heart is a big valve. It's a pump. Okay. I'm just telling you. So it's energy. Our universe is surrounded with energy. You're seeing me on the cell phone because my phone has energy, right? And it's being powered. So it says, they could lose faith. So imagine, too, if a dead person had to watch her loved ones distraught and helpless with grief, it could plunge her into a deep grief also. And if a dead person were to discover, for example, that the relatives only made a show of loving her because of her money, she could become so painfully disillusioned that she returned as a ghost to haunt the interior of her wealth. This has happened, you guys. This happens. You can see now that what you do and how you think and how you behave after a person has died can be a crucial importance and have a far greater impact on their future than one could possibly even imagine. So you're not taught this stuff. Okay? You will see now why it is absolutely essential for the peace of mind of a dead person that those who are left behind should be harmonious. This is why in Tibet, when all the friends and relatives of the deceased person assemble, they were encouraged to practice together and to say as much as possible a mantra such as Om Mani Padwa Om. This is something that is everyone in Tibet could do and knew would definitely help the dead person, and which inspired them all to act as a fervent communal prayer. When you are harmonizing as one in these religious institutions, as people call them, churches or mosques or synagogues, whatever, when you get together as an energy being and you're all in accordance and you're all singing and then you're all praying and you're all standing and you're taking communion and you're singing and you're praying, you are casting energy out into the ether. I don't care what you say. You are doing the exact same thing. You're just taught it's different. It's a different meaning and it's different words that you're saying, but you're doing the same practice. All right. The clairvoyance of the dead person in the bardo becoming is also what makes the practice done by a master or experienced spiritual practitioner on his or her behalf of such exceptional benefit. The person who is closest to the deceased has the largest, would emit a larger energy out into the ether because they're directly connected with that person, right? So in other words, that person's children could do the same prayer. Same energy send out to them, that they go on their way and that they continue to grow and learn and love and know that they are still with you, because energy can never be destroyed. It can only transform. Okay. That's my point. So it says, what a master does is to rest in the primordial state of Rigpa, the nature of the mind, and invoke the mental body of the dead person roaming into the bardo of becoming. When the mental body comes into the master's presence through the power of meditation, he or she can point out the essential nature of Rigpa. Through the power of its clairvoyance, the bardo being then can see directly into the master's wisdom mind, and so there and then be introduced to the nature of the mind and be liberated. Whatever practice an ordinary practitioner can do as well for a close friend who has died can, for the same reason, be an enormous help. You might do the practice, for example, of 100 peaceful and wrathful deities associated with the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Or you might simply rest in a steady state of compassion and love and thinking on positive things with this person and having good memories. All right. Especially if you then invoke the dead person and invite him or her into the heart core of your practice, it can be an immense benefit for this individual. Om Mani Padme Hum. Simply saying. Whenever Buddhist practitioners die, we inform their master, all the spiritual teachers and their spiritual friends, so that they can immediately start practicing for them. Usually I collect the names of people who have passed and send them to great masters I know in India and the Himalayas. Every few weeks they will include them in a purification practice, and once in a year in a 10-day intensive group practice in the monasteries. And it says the Tibetan Buddhist practices for the dead. The Tibetan Book of the Dead. In Tibet, once the Patwa practice has been done for the dying person, the Tibetan Book of the Dead is read repeatedly and the practices associated with this are done. In Eastern Tibet, we used to have a tradition of reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead for the whole 49 days after the death. Through the reading, the dead are shown what stage of the process of death they are in, because they are out of their body. It's a whole world on the other side, just like it is here. I don't care how you think and how you feel. It is real, okay? Death is real and life is real. And the in-between is real, all right? And it says, in the process death they are in, and given whatever inspiration and guidance they need. Westerners often ask me, how can a person who has died hear the Tibetan Book of the Dead? The simple reply is that the consciousness of the dead person, when it is invoked by the power of prayer, is able to read our minds and can feel exactly whatever we may be thinking or meditating on. And I'm sending peace and love and good energy to my deceased relative and my relatives that have gone on years ago. All right. You need to know this energy is real. Just like I am talking to you on this camera. It is real. All right. And it says, this makes it all more vital that the practitioner should be focused and attentive as possible when doing the practice and not merely performing it for a route. Okay. Just doing it to get attention. No, you're doing it because it's truly in your heart. And this is why I'm doing this, okay? Because it needs to be shed. It needs to be talked about, okay? Also, as the dead person is living, the actual experiences he or she may have greater capacity to understand the truth of the Tibetan Book of the Dead than we do. So, because they've crossed over, they have a different perception and understanding now because they're out of the body. What do they say? To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord, right? You're in the bardo. You're in that state, that in between state right now, right? And you still have contact with them after they've passed. All right. So it says, the simply replies that the consciousness of the dead person, when invoked by the power of prayer, is to be able to read our minds and can feel exactly whatever we may be thinking or meditating on. That is why there is no obstacle to the dead person's understanding the Tibetan Book of the Dead or practices done on their behalf, even though they may be recited in Tibetan. For the dead person, language is no barrier at all. For the essential meaning of the text can be understood fully and directly by his or her mind. This makes it all more vital that the practitioner should be focused and attentive as possible when doing the practice and not merely performing it to be a show. Also, as the dead person is living, the actual experiences he or she may have a greater capacity to understand the truth of the Tibetan Book of the Dead than we do. I am sometimes asked, but what happens if the consciousness has already fainted into an obvious oblivious state at the moment of death? Since we do not know how long the person will remain in that state of unconsciousness and what point he or she will enter the bardo of becoming, the Tibetan Book of the Dead is read and practiced repeatedly to cover any eventuality. But what about the people who are not familiar with the teachings of the Tibetan Book of the Dead? Should we read it to them? The Dalai Lama has given us this clear guidance, and it says, whenever you believe in religion or not, it is very important to have a peaceful mind at the time of death. From a Buddhist point of view, whether the person who dies believes in rebirth or not, their rebirth exists. And so a peaceful mind, even if it's a neutral, is important at the time of death. If the person is a non-believer reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead, could agitate their mind. It could arouse aversion and so even harm them instead of helping them. In the case of a person who is open to it, however, the mantras or the names of the Buddhas might help them to generate some kind of connection, and it could be helpful. It is important to take into account, above all, the attitude of the dying person. The Nin, Drin, and Cheng Chok. Hand in hand with the reading of the Tibetan Book of the Dead goes the practice of Nindrin, the ritual for guiding the dead, or the Chang Shok, the ritual purification in which a master will guide the consciousness of the dead person to a better rebirth. You're leading them or you're guiding them or you're helping them. Ideally, the Ninjin or the Chimchok should be done immediately after death, or at least within the 49 days. If the corpse is not present, the consciousness of the deceased is summoned into an effigy or card bearing the likeness and name, or even a photograph called a Tenjin. The Ninjin or the Chimchok derive their power from the fact that during the period immediately after death, the dead person will have a strong feeling of possessing the body of its recent life. All right? And so sometimes they linger. Okay? Through the power of the master's meditation, the consciousness of the dead person roaming aimlessly in the bardo is called into the Tenjin, which represents the dead person's identity. The consciousness is then purified and the karmic seeds of the 6 realms are cleansed. A teaching is given just as in life, and the dead person is introduced to the nature of the mind. Finally, the Papwa is effected, and the dead person's consciousness is directed towards one of the Buddha realms. Then the Tijing, representing the individual's old and now discarded identity, is burned, and their karma is purified. Okay? It goes into the purification of the 6 realms, the practice of the 100 peaceful and the wrathful deities, okay? And it talks about the cremation and the weekly practices. Now I'm going to skip ahead and I'm going to go to part 5 of the cremation for time's sake, all right? Let me see. Let's see. Let me just jump down the purification of 6 realms. All right, so he says his master Delgo Shenese Rinpoche often used to say that the practice known as the purification of the 6 realms was the best possible purification practice for the practitioner who has died. The purification of the 6 realms is a practice used in life that employs visualization and meditation to purify the body of each of the 6 main negative emotions, along with the realms of existence they create. It can also be used as effectively for the dead, and practically powerful because it purifies the root of their karma and so of their connection with samsara. This is essential if these negative emotions are not purified. That will dictate which realm of Sumatra the dead person will be reborn in. You don't want them to go to a lower realm. You want them to be reborn into a higher realm. All right. According to the Dijon Tantras, the negative emotions accumulate in the psycho-physical system of subtle channels, inner air, and energy, and gather at particular energy centers in the body. All right. There's a bunch of points. We always talk about the 7 main chakras, but there's more than that. All right. It says, so the seat of hell realm and its cause, anger, are located at the soles of the feet. The hungry ghost realm and its cause, the adversary, rests at the base of the trunk. The animal realm and its cause, its ignorance, rests at the navel. The human realm and its cause, doubt, rests at the heart. The demigod realm and its cause, which is jealousy, rests at the throat. And the God realm and its cause, pride, rests at the crown of the head. All right? And practice of the purification of the 6 realms. When each realm and its negative emotion is purified, the practitioner imagines that all karma created by that particular emotion is now exhausted and it's freed. And the specific part of the body associated with the karma of the practical emotion dissolves entirely into light. So when you do this practice for a dead person, imagine with all of your heart and mind, at the end of the practice, all the karma is purified in their body and their entire being dissolve into a radiant light. All right. Another means to help the deceased person is to practice 100 peaceful, wrathful deities. The practitioner considers his or her entire body as the mandala of the 100 peaceful and wrathful deities. The peaceful deities are visualized in the energy centers in the heart and the wrathful deities in the brain. The practitioner then imagines that the deities send out thousands of rays of light which stream out to the body, to the dead, and purify all the negative karma. The mantra of the purification the practitioner recites is the mantra of the Vishradra, the presiding deity of the tantric mandalas, and the central deity of the mandala of the 100 peaceful, wrathful deities, which power is invoked especially for purification and for healing. This is a 100-syllable mantra, which includes seed syllables of each of the 100 peaceful and wrathful deities. You can use a short 6-syllable form. It's called Vajare Shatva Hum. The essential meaning of the mantra, O Vashari, through your power may you bring out purification, healing, and transformation. I strongly recommend this mantra for healing and purification. Another important mantra which appears in the Dakshan Chin Tantras and the practices associated with the Tibetan Book of the Dead is Ah Sha Sa Mam. The 6 syllables of the mantra have the power to close the gates to the 6 realms of the samsara. Cremation. Generally, in many Eastern traditions, cremation is the way of disposing of the corpse. In the Tibetan Buddhism, there are also specific practices for cremation. The crematorium or the funeral pyre is visualized in the mandala of the Mahastra, or the 100 peaceful or wrathful deities, and the deities are strongly visualized and their presence is invoked. The dead person's corpse is seen as actually representing all of his or her negative karma and obscurations. As the corpse burns, these are consumed by the deities as a great feast and transmuted and transformed by them into the wisdom of nature. Rays of light are imagined through streaming out of their deities, and the corpse is visualized dissolving completely into the light. As all of the impurities of the body of the dead person are purified in the blazing flames of wisdom. Incidentally, when you burn the body, you have the 13 cell salts that are left, that remain, okay? Which is what we're comprised of, all right? Just a little tidbit. So it says, rays of light are imagined streaming out of the deities, and the corpse is visualized dissolving completely into light, and all the impurities of the dead person are purified in the blazing flames of wisdom. As you visualize this, you can recite the 100-syllable, 6-syllable mantra, and this simple practice for cremation was transmitted and inspired by, he says, the Dojom Rinpoche and the Dilgo Kanshiti Ranapish. The ashes of the body and the tijing can then be mixed with clay to make the little images called satsiya. These are blessed and dedicated on behalf of the deceased person, so creating as auspicious conditions for a future good rebirth. And then it goes into the weekly practices that you can do. In Tibetan environment, practices and rituals happen regularly every 7th day after death, or if the family can afford it. For each of the 49 days, monks are invited to do a practice, especially the lamas who are close to the family and had linked with the dead person. Lights are offered and prayers said continuously, especially until the time the body is taken out of the house. Offerings are made to the masters and to the shrines, and alms are given to the poor in the name of the dead person. These weekly practices on behalf of the dead person are considered essential, since the mental body in the bardo of becoming undergoes every week, remember, on the same day, the experience of death. Okay? If the dead person has enough merit as a result of positive actions in the past, then the benefit of these practices can give him or her the impetus to transfer to a pure realm. Strictly speaking, if a person passed away on a Wednesday before noon, the first week's practice day fall on the following Tuesday. If the person died afternoon, it would fall on the following Wednesday. Tibetans regard the 4th week after death especially significant because some say that most ordinary beings do not stay in the bardo longer than 4 weeks. All right. The 7th week is also considered a critical juncture, as 49 days is taught to be generally the longest stay in the bardo. So on these occasions, masters and practitioners will be invited to the house, and the practices, offerings, and donations to the needy are performed on a grander scale. Another offering, ceremony, and feast is held 1 year after the death to mark the dead person's rebirth. Most Tibetan families have annual ceremonies on the anniversaries of the teachers, parents, husbands, wives, brothers, sisters, aunts, and uncles. On these days, they will also give donations to the poor and helping the bereaved. Okay, so it talks about that. It also talks about a heart practice, okay? Invocation, calling out, filling the heart with bliss, and keeping the heart open, okay? ending grief and learning through grief. Okay. And it talks about that. So it says, keeping the heart open. I'm going to skip down to this part. Don't expect immediate results or a miracle. It may only be after a while, even much later, when you least expected, that your suffering will shift. Okay. This is after the grieving process. This is the stages of grief. Okay. Do not have any expectation that it is going to work and end your grief once and for all. Be open to your grief and as open as you are to enlightened beings and Buddhas in this practice. You may even come to feel mysteriously grateful towards your suffering because it gives you such an opportunity of working through it and transforming it. Without it, you would never have been able to discover that hidden in the nature and depths of suffering is a treasure of bliss. The times when you are suffering can be those when you are most open, and when you are extremely vulnerable can be where your greatness, your greatest strength really lies. So say to yourself then, I am not going to run away from the suffering. I want to use it in the best way and the richest way I can so that I can become more compassionate and more helpful to others. Suffering, after all, can teach us about compassion. If you suffer, you know how it is when others suffer. And if you are in a position to help others, it is through your suffering that you will find the understanding and compassion to do so. So whatever you do, don't shut off your pain, accept your pain, and remain vulnerable. However, despite desperate you become, accept your pain as it is, because it is in fact trying to hand you a priceless gift, the chance of discovering through spiritual practice what lies beyond sorrow. Grief, Rumi wrote, can be a garden of compassion. If you keep your heart open through everything, your pain can become your greatest ally in your life search for love and wisdom. And don't we know only too well that protection from pain doesn't work, and that when we are tried to defend ourselves from suffering, we only suffer more and don't learn what we can from that experience. As Rahi wrote, the protected heart that is never exposed to loss, innocent and secure, cannot know tenderness. Only the one back heart can be satisfied, free through all it has given up to rejoice in its mastery. When you are overwhelmed by your suffering, try to inspire yourself in one of those many ways I mentioned when I spoke of meditation practice in chapter 5, which I haven't covered, okay? But it says, bringing the mind home, one of the most powerful methods I have found to soothe and dissolve sorrow is to go into nature, and especially to stand and contemplate by a waterfall and let your tears and grief pour out of you and purify you like the water flowing down. Or you could read a moving text on an emergence of sorrow and let its wisdom bring you solace. To accept and end grief is possible. One way that many people have used and found helpful is a variation on the method I explained for completing unfinished business. No matter how long ago your loved one has passed, you will find this most effective. Visualize that all the Buddhas and enlightened beings are in the sky above and around you, shining down their rays of compassion, light, and giving you their support and blessing. In their presence, grief, they say what you have to say and what is really in your heart and mind to your loved one who has died. Visualize that person who is dead and is looking at you with a greater love and understanding than he or she ever had while alive. Know that the dead person wants you to understand that he or she loves you and forgives you for whatever you may have done, and wants to ask for and receive your forgiveness. Allow your heart to open and put your words into words, any anger and any feelings of hurt you may have been harboring, and let go of them completely. With your whole heart and mind, let your forgiveness go outward toward that deceased person. Tell him or her of your forgiveness, and tell him or her of the regret you feel for all the pain you may have caused. Now feel with your whole being his or her forgiveness and love streaming toward you. Knowing the depths of your own self, that you are lovable and deserve to be forgiven, and feel your grief dissolve. At the end of the practice, ask yourself if you can now truly say farewell and really let go of the person. Imagine that person turning and leaving, and then conclude by doing the pathwa, another practice for helping the dead. This practice will give you the chance of showing your love once more, doing something to help the person who has passed, and completing and healing the relationship in your heart. So again, I'm going to stop it there. It's all about having compassion and love, being in a positive state of mind, sending that person goodwill, and praying on that person, praying for that person so that they can go through the transition of their next life or their next journey. So many times here in the West, we say, again, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Okay. But it is much more than just that. We do return back to source. We do return back to the creator of all, but there is a pathway, just as in the living, as in the death or the bardo, the in-between. And we are not privy to this stuff, because we're not taught these things. So it says at the very end of this chapter, it says, so my heartfelt advice to those in the depths of grief and despair after losing someone they dearly love is to pray for help and strength and grace. All right. Pray you will survive and discover the richest possible meaning to the new life you now find yourself in. Be vulnerable and receptive, be courageous and be patient. Above all, look into your life to find ways of sharing your love more deeply with others in the now. Okay, so I hope this has been beneficial. Kind of skipped around and got to the very end, but I wanted to just touch on this because, again, we're here in the West and we're not taught these things, right? I'm sending good love and vibration to my auntie who is transformed and has transitioned to the other side. And I know that she has been with me as she has been with other family members. And we all have to go that route, right? So you may find it, some of you may be offended by this. I don't know why, but you could be. And you may think, oh, this is all hogwash and poppycock. But I'm here to tell you that if you know, you know. You know, and I'm speaking on something because I have had that, I'm not going to say pleasure, but I've had that transition to where I stopped breathing. I hovered above my body. I saw them working on me. I felt the pain when they shocked me. I was in the tunnel. I did the review. I was asked the question and I was brought back. They sent me back. I was sent back to fulfill this purpose that I am now doing. So I hope this has been beneficial to you all. I hope this finds you well. And remember what I always say in every video, be the change you want to see all around this world, all around this dome, because it's up to you and I to make a positive change. And I'm praying and sending good energy, vibration, and love to all my deceased family members, the ones I have never met and the ones I have met that have transitioned on. And I'm hoping that they have all transitioned into their next life and that life is better than this one, right? They are being reborn or they are ascending to our higher states of consciousness to reconnect with the creator of all, right? Ultimate goal is to go back to source, but there's levels to it. And we're not taught that in Christianity. We're just taught if we say these things, we believe in Jesus Christ, he's going to save us, he's going to forgive us of our sins, and we're going to go on and we'll get our reward in heaven. No. Heaven is a state of mind. Sin is a lower aspect of your consciousness, and it also is the energy that sits at the base of the spine that you need to learn how to embrace and maneuver and control and manifest and move that energy and move the energy up and meditate and fast and pray. There are different practices, spiritual practices that you need to do prior to you becoming entangled, right? I mean, I'm just going to say it. Our brain is a receiver. We have millions of magnetite crystals in our brain, and our bodies are batteries. We have energy within us. We have to magnify or push out that energy, and we need to learn how to control it too. And we're not taught that. And that's all I'm going to simply say. So I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I will be back soon for another video. I'll talk with you soon.